Previously on Top 10 List Z, that's not what the series is actually called. The most unfitting guest characters in fighting games were decided using the opinion of some guy on the internet, aka me. But there was still one more self-imposed task to complete on the topic. Guest characters that fit the best with the universe they guest starred in. The best ones fit into the fighting games universe almost seamlessly, while bringing new players who come for the guest character but stay for the combat, with a C. It's hard to call characters the best objectively, so I'm going to go with the guest characters that fit in with the fighting game they appeared in without having to change too much about what makes that character unique. A fun moveset also doesn't hurt. Games with multiple guest characters will just have one chosen from the bunch. So sorry Soul Calibur and Mortal Kombat X guests. AT will be joining me again for a couple parts of this video, who helped capture a majority of the footage you'll be seeing at times in this video. So let's go! The top 10 fitting guest characters in fighting games. Number 10. Akira Yuki, Sarah Bryant, and Pai-chan from Virtua Fighter in Dead or Alive 5. Dead or Alive and Virtua Fighter have always had similar core mechanics, as in a 3D plane fighter with close combat martial artists exploring different fighting styles. These two franchises work well together. Seeing Akira, Pai, or Sarah in the DOA style and the DOA swimsuits makes me feel like they always belonged in this franchise. Dead or Alive takes things to the next level by adding some more pizzazz to the fights compared to Virtua Fighter, giving the Virtua Fighter characters some extra flair we never saw in their own series. Overall, they may not be the flashiest characters, but they look good in this game. And if you want me to choose just one, Akira. I guess since he's the main character of Virtua Fighter, or just Sarah Bryant because I'd rather play as her. Number 9. Street Fighter's Akuma in X-Men Children of the Atom. Akuma was a secret boss and could be accessed as a playable character through hidden means in this game. He was not the ideal guest character, but his look kinda fit in with the Capcom sprite designs of the X-Men. The game itself was the first in a long line of Marvel-based Capcom fighting games, so when establishing its style as a fighting game series, it felt like a less restrained Street Fighter at first. Why not add the most powerful Street Fighter character that breaks reality the most? Also, this game was released shortly after Akuma's first Street Fighter game, so it fed into the hype surrounding him at the time. The biggest reason his appearance was so important was that it showed how Street Fighter characters could function in a comic book style fighting game. Akuma was basically given a boost on all of his attacks to make him fit with the mechanics of the game, showing that maybe we could have a more prolific crossover between video game characters and comic book heroes in the future. Maybe that crossover was planned from the beginning, but I feel Akuma's inclusion helped influence the eventual crossover games. Plus, he was rebuilt as Cyber Akuma in one crossover, so that was cool. Man, Akuma should guest appear in more fighting games. Nah, what are the chances of that happening? Get that word off the screen. Number 8. Scorpion from Mortal Kombat in Injustice Gods Among Us. I didn't think I'd be on board with Scorpion as a guest character when I first heard about it. We all remember what happened with Mortal Kombat vs. DC. Well, when the trailer came out, instead of showing us gameplay right away, Jim Lee and Ed Boon had an intro talking about what influenced them to put Scorpion in the game. And you know what? I liked it. Co-creator of Mortal Kombat Ed Boon basically said when MK was introduced, they also published some comic books to expand the universe, which they did do. The comics went deep into the lore of MK and were closely related to the visions of the creators. Since Scorpion had ties to being a comic book character like the other DC characters in Injustice, there was more logic than simply promoting Mortal Kombat for his appearance in the game. Granted, that was still an influencing factor. To make Scorpion fit the designs of the heroes and villains we saw in Injustice, comic book artist veteran Jim Lee designed Scorpion's costume. It also helped that Injustice had a dark Mortal Kombat feel, both being made by NetherRealm Studios, so Scorpion still fit in with the tone. And if you want an explanation on how Scorpion can fight on the same level as Superman, Kryptonian Nanotech, the same plot device from the game's story mode, explaining how Green Arrow can fight on the same level as characters like Shazam. Of course, a pill should probably just fall through his jaw since he just has a skull for a head in this version. Scorpion is alive because of sorcery, a weakness of many DC superheroes, which was the plot device in Mortal Kombat vs. DC Universe. NetherRealm Studios is pretty good at making plug-in plot devices, so either one can work here, I guess. Number 7. Arale, or Arale as the Funimation Dragon Ball dub pronounces it, from Dr. Slump in Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 3. Does the term canonical guest character make sense? Because that's what she is. She's not a part of the Dragon Ball universe per se, but she appeared for a few episodes in Dragon Ball and resolved a major plot point, defeating a key antagonist when Goku inexplicably entered the universe of Dr. Slump, Akira Toriyama's manga and anime he made before Dragon Ball. When Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 3 was made, the developers wanted to put in as many characters from Dragon Ball, DBZ, and GT as they could fit in there. As long as they could think of a moveset, it was fair game. Since Arale appeared at a point in Dragon Ball, she fit the bill. The game was still supposed to have only Dragon Ball characters in there, so she's a guest character in that sense, despite her crossover cameo in the series. Her attacks were pretty funny looking, as in it's kinda weird to see them in a Dragon Ball Z format. Outside of her ultimate attack, which brings in some more characters from her anime, she just runs at you as an attack and throws giant rocks at you since she's a robot. Those attacks are actually pretty common in the Tenkaichi fighting game series, so it helps her fit in with the crowd. Her moves at least have their own names to make them feel more unique. Plus, because Akira Toriyama designed her, the look of her fits in with the other Dragon Ball characters, making her a good sort of guest character. Number 6. Cloud from Final Fantasy VII in Super Smash Bros. 4. Sort of. Let me explain. Choosing a guest character from Smash Bros. Was a bit difficult because I had to think of what truly makes a guest in Smash Bros. Of course, any first or second party Nintendo characters are standard, but Smash Bros. Represents the legacy of Nintendo, which could still include third-party characters. That would mean characters from franchises who have had strong ties with Nintendo, both old and recent, could fit in as characters who are not particularly guest characters by that logic. With that judgment, third-party characters like Mega Man, who had most of his original games exclusively on the NES and later SNES, Pac-Man, who had plenty of Nintendo releases when brought outside of the arcades, and even former rival Sonic, who not only had plenty of exclusive Nintendo games, but also regularly challenges Mario to Olympic Games on Mario's home court, are not exactly guests. Snake and Cloud, on the other hand, are true guests. By that I mean they're more third-party characters that gravitated towards Sony. So why Cloud over Snake? It's mainly because Cloud fits in better with the dynamics of many Smash Bros. Characters. Look at all the sword fighters in Smash Bros. Between the Zelda franchise and Fire Emblem, Cloud makes sense fighting against them with his own sword fighting style. In addition, Cloud did not have to change elements from his RPG powers to fit with the game's rating, like how Snake's toned down weapons did, which was really my deciding factor. Also, Cloud's stage just has elements pulled straight from Final Fantasy, and they work as stage impediments in Super Smash Bros. I know no one ever sees them because they go to the Omega stages right away, but hey, they're cool. However, that's only because I have that convoluted definition of guest characters in Smash Bros. If I just went with third-party characters, sorry Cloud, I'd have to choose Mega... Ryu? Sonic? Well, this decision is the hardest one I've had to make since choosing Bulbasaur. Hey, this Pokeball's empty, you... I forgot about Bayonetta. She's sort of a guest character. Fine, since this part is long enough, random 20-second Bayonetta segment. AT, lead me in with something outrageous.
Bayonetta's inclusion gives some much-needed sex appeal in the Smash Bros. Franchise. Well, I mean, there was Zero Suit Samus and Snake, but now we have even more sex and guns.
How did Bayonetta add sex appeal and extra weapons violence, yet the game went down in ESRB rating from Brawl? It must have been one of those missing characters between those games. It was already T-rated in Melee without Snake, so it was the Ice Climbers. You know what? It was probably Wolf. That third Landmaster was too much to handle.
We're gonna have fun with this thing.
Number 5. Street Fighter's Akuma in Tekken 7. So at the time of this recording, Tekken 7 has not yet seen an international release, so I based this choice solely off of watching plenty of gameplay, but he really works well here. Akuma and X-Men Children of the Atom fit to an extent, but he was not among other martial artists like he is here. With no major signs of Namco's Tekken X Street Fighter being in the works, I've wondered how can a Street Fighter character work in a Tekken game? There are a few Street Fighter characters I feel could fit very well with the Tekken cast without needing a crossover, and Akuma is definitely high on that list. The whole Satsui Inohara plotline feels in line with the Devil Gene plot we see in Tekken. While obviously not the same, Akuma tapping into this dark energy is something that we see a lot in Tekken. And the fact that the trailer implies his role in Tekken 7 relates to being some sort of mercenary called in because he's got the power to take on Tekken's characters, well, it makes it feel like it's this hyped up summer blockbuster movie with him in Tekken 7. Seeing Akuma's moveset on a 3D plane without being altered from their Street Fighter look is great. It shows Street Fighter attacks can work when adjusted in the Tekken universe. Moves like his Demon Flip, Tatsu's, and of course the Raging Demon look the same without breaking the Tekken physics. If this is why Akuma did not make the initial Street Fighter V roster or the first wave of DLC, at least we all know he was doing something worthwhile with his time. Does that also mean the Tekken 7 story and the Street Fighter V story occur in real time? Number 4. Sakura from Street Fighter and Rival Schools. Rival Schools was a Capcom fighting game that could never seem to get itself off the ground. The game involved matches with two-player teams of high school students and teachers fighting with clubs or school subjects relating to their fighting style. It was an early attempt at a polygonal fighting game by Capcom as opposed to their traditional sprite-based character models. It had its sequels and canceled comic books, but it never quite got that boost in popularity. Maybe the game needed a well-known face to get the players' attention, which is why they turned to an already established fighter whose main character attribute is high school student, Sakura Kasugano, right in the first game. They didn't beat around the bush when it came to getting a more notable franchise's character. It's pretty clear why Sakura is fitting here. A high schooler martial artist fits in a fighting game about high schools. It seems Capcom wanted to make sure Sakura was just treated as a guest character though, possibly because they did not want her to steal the spotlight from other original characters in Rival Schools. Sakura does not have an arcade storyline like the rest of the cast, however she does have an arcade ending. Her moveset is exactly what you would expect, so enjoy your Shotokan style! Another sign that Capcom was pushing her as just a guest character rather than a regular part of the cast was that she was from a high school that no other character represented. Each character in the game represents a high school, and there's usually some overlapping high schools to show that the characters are from the same team. Sakura is from Tamagawa Minami High, like in Street Fighter, where her uniform signifies she goes to school at... well, it was stated she goes to school... yeah. Anyway, I always sort of expected Rival Schools to cross over with the Street Fighter franchise, similar to what happened with Final Fight, since the characters from Rival Schools seem like they could be integrated into the Street Fighter universe. Sakura has been shown to be friends with the characters Hinata and Natsu from Rival Schools, but I guess she has her own high schoolers in her own universe to face, which is why she might have forgotten about her buds in this forgotten franchise. Number 3. Arbiter from Halo and Killer Instinct 2013.
I have faced the flood and silenced truth. I will quell your thunder and douse your flame.
Have you ever seen a character's intro and just thought, this guy means business? I'm not very familiar with the characters in Halo, so if I was never told he's from another series, I would have just thought he's another good, new character in Killer Instinct. Two major attributes outside of fighting styles we see in Killer Instinct are characters with gritty humanoid designs and movie or fiction tropes. Arbiter fits the darker dystopian future tone since Halo takes place in a similar atmosphere, and he fits with the movie trope theme considering we have not had a space warrior in the Killer Instinct cast yet. He goes well with the tropes of robots, aliens, ninjas, werewolves, barbarians, vampires, and much more. Arbiter also counters the issues I had with the Spartan and Dead or Alive 4 on both sides. He uses more iconic weapons from the series, expanding his moveset, and it makes sense for him to use those moves. In Dead or Alive, characters taking out a gun or energy sword doesn't really work with the game's mechanics. However, in Killer Instinct, where characters shoot fireballs or set traps all the time, he's basically at home. I like how his attacks were translated very well from a shooting game to a fighting game. Overall, he's well designed and manages to get many references to Halo in those attacks. Number 2. Predator in Mortal Kombat X. MKX had 4 guest characters: Jason Voorhees, the Predator, Leatherface, and a Xenomorph. Considering each one was from a movie, NetherRealm Studios had to find ways to make these characters function as video game characters that generally did not fight in one-on-one battles in their own movies. Not only were these movesets they created fun, but they were also unique.
You're beautiful and unique snowflakes.
Of all these characters, Predator felt like the best fit for Mortal Kombat. First off, he's a warrior rather than a slasher villain or savage alien. Those types of characters more wait until their victim is most vulnerable for a sneak attack rather than a head-to-head fight. Predator has still done the sneak attacks too, but he is the only one of the bunch that would realistically go into a fight. He also uses weapons that, while being alien artillery, are seemingly on par with the weapons you see in Mortal Kombat that would kill you in real life, but equate to a moderately strong punch in the game. The design of Predator also works great in Mortal Kombat, since you can see how the movie franchise may have influenced the Mortal Kombat creators. It seems the cyborg designs are influenced by Predator, and the concept for fatalities gained some, but not all, influence from what we saw in the Predator franchise. Let's just say Sub-Zero was not the first character to rip out a person's spine. Having Predator in Mortal Kombat fits because it helped shape Mortal Kombat. Really, they're almost like colleagues. Mortal Kombat came out 5 years after the first Predator movie. Really, they create the best crossover ever. Well, second best according to this list. Number 1. Okay, I didn't mean to have a Soul Calibur guest character as number 1 on both guest character lists, so I guess that means they're really good at getting all types of guest characters. Number 1. Link from Legend of Zelda in Soul Calibur 2.
Youth and passion combine to create a hardened warrior.
Something I've noted in some entries is how well characters fit the theme of the game that they're guest starring in. In Soul Calibur, we have sword fighters in a medieval era. And then Legend of Zelda, which follows a sword wielder in that time period too, I think. They don't entirely elaborate on that, but you can tell by the imagery. Look how well Link fit into the intro of Soul Calibur 2 when we see a montage of all the characters. As for his moveset, it's translated well into a 3D plane fighter, as opposed to his 2D plane appearances in Smash Bros. He's not a standard sword fighter either. He uses weapons we see in the Smash series, top-down Zeldas, and 3D Zeldas, such as his arrows and bombs, plus his shield. I loved his movesets in both Smash Bros. And Soul Calibur 2, since they were different takes on Link, yet were equally excellent representations of him. The inclusion of Link in Soul Calibur 2 is pretty interesting, since Nintendo generally does not lend its characters to other franchises unless those franchises are directly related to Nintendo. The previous 2 games, Soul Legend, Soul Calibur, only saw home console releases on the PlayStation and the Sega Dreamcast respectively, so there was no pure loyalty to Nintendo with Soul Calibur. While this partnership had the prospect of increasing game sales for the GameCube, this was definitely a better marketing deal for Namco, but I'll let AT cover that.
All the console versions of Soul Calibur 2 had their own individual exclusives. The Xbox version had Spawn, the PS2 version had Heihachi from Tekken, and the GameCube version had Link. Link being in the GameCube version was a genius marketing move for Namco and Nintendo. I highly credit his inclusion for being the reason why the GameCube version of Soul Calibur 2 outsold the other versions. From my experience, this got a lot of people I know interested in Soul Calibur.
IGN reported in 2004 that between Soul Calibur 2's console release in late August 2003 and the end of 2003, the GameCube version outsold the PS2 version by around 50,000 copies, and years after that, the GameCube retained its lead by about the same margin, supporting the idea that Link helped people gravitate toward the GameCube version, and raised interest of newcomers in the series. Maybe Nightmare or Ivy were not iconic yet, but in video game history, Link surely was.
Before Link was in the game, it was like Soul Calibur who? But then when Link is in Soul Calibur 2, it's like, oh, well, now I gotta go buy the Soul Calibur games.
Yeah, back in 2003 I was guilty of that. I just heard of Soul Calibur because Link was in there, but hey, it introduced me to one of my favorite fighting game franchises today, so it worked. It helped that this was an accurate Link. They didn't just character swap Cassandra or someone else. The audience would have felt ripped off otherwise, and it would have killed that word-of-mouth advertising. Even everything Link says in Soul Calibur 2 fits his traditional iconic dialect, like... He still says all that normally, right? Alright, good, I just wanted to make sure. So there we go, Link in Soul Calibur 2. My favorite and the most fitting guest character in a fighting game in my opinion. Now what do you think? Do you have the same feelings on these characters as I do, or were there some that were unfitting or in the middle for you? Who are some of your favorite guest characters in fighting games? Let me know. Thank you all for watching. If this is the first you're hearing of me talking about fighting game guest characters, I have a previous video on the other side of guest characters, the strange or unfitting ones, that you might enjoy. Or not, opinions vary. Anyway, I'll see you in the next video.